Hello, everyone. Dr. Nick Verma here with another edition of Things I Didn't Learn in Med School. I was trying to think of, what the whole message of this YouTube channel is supposed to be about, and it kind of broke down into four big segments, at least the way I see it. One of them being breaking down the pros and cons, the pitfalls, the assembly of a private practice, some things that I'm going through in my own world to allow that information to be processed to other people that might be interested in building their own private practice, or if they just have a fascination with how the process works. Um, the second portion is a lot to do with physician advocacy and the bureaucracy of private privatization of medicine, and as far as the private equity and big hospital groups. It also kind of talks about the how the medical system works in that realm. There's a smaller portion based off of some of my personal beliefs and feelings and thoughts and philosophies of life. And then that last portion is a portion that I get a lot of feedback from, is me just kind of getting on a rant on something, whether that be on topic of one of the above or me just getting a little heated up. Which brings me to today's point, and it's going to encompass a lot of these, all four of the topics. And it's funny because I did get heated up about something today, and I'll get to that and why I decided to shoot this video tonight instead of usually I shoot on Friday mornings. Regardless, I'll probably still put it up on Friday morning. It's getting pretty late here. It's 6:30 p.m., 6:40 p.m. I got here at 7:15 a.m. And one of the things I was thinking of is, this is kind of how the process works. If you're going to go into private practice, you're going to have to sacrifice certain hours of your day to do this. I came in super early to try to take care of some things, try to take care of some invoices and some bills and order some supplies. And then the next thing you know, it's time to start procedures. And unfortunately, my MA was running late today. So we got started an hour later than we should have got started. And I'm not blaming her. Things happen. And I completely am compassionate about that, empathetic with that. Sometimes I run late. Last Friday, I was running late because of car issues. But thankfully, my patients were very understanding. I talked to all of them, apologized a million times, et cetera, et cetera. But because we started an hour late, that pushed everything back. We actually ended procedures about 2 hours late because of people that had to reschedule because of where they were and things they had to do and transportation. And then after that, I spent some extra time cleaning some things up around the office, taking care of some other invoices, had a couple meetings. And by the time I looked at the clock, it was already 5 o'clock. I'm like, well, at this point, I might as well try to prep for the next tomorrow. And that doesn't mean my to-do list is done tomorrow. I just have been trying to take care of as much as I can before the weekend so I can actually focus on other things to promote and build this practice, like coming into my office and setting some things up. And I think the whole point of this whole story is that, it's not just working long hours, it's working long hours and then some on stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think that you need to do, but you need to do it. So when you have that flow, you got to just go with that flow and keep running. And that's kind of what I did today. I was gonna even just think, I was like, man, I can keep working. I have nowhere to go right now. I have nowhere to be. I have dinner that I just need to pop in the oven. It won't take more than 15 minutes to make. So it's, no rush. But I was like, you know what? There needs to be the cutoff point. Sahil Bloom talks about this a lot in his newsletter. If you have the Curiosity Chronicles. If you have any interest in better development and just learning some really cool stuff, I recommend checking his stuff out. But he talks about it. It's like, just have a shutdown mode, like where you just say, and literally say, I'm commencing shutdown mode, and just end the day. If I didn't do this, I would be here till 8 or 9 o'clock. I know myself, and I would be. So I'm going to give myself some leniency and walk away very shortly after I shoot this video, because this is top of my mind, and it saves me some time tomorrow. Maybe I'll get to sleep in. So that was just a quick portion, but the thing I wanted to talk about specifically, and the title of this is AI, artificial intelligence. We all know with Chat GPT and the open IO platforms with artificial intelligence coming out and making these incredible whatever you can think of. They make scripts for videos. They can write full books in a certain tone. They can write poems. They can argue you medical bills. They can argue the insurance companies when they deny you something. You type in what the procedure is and why it's beneficial. It'll pull up research papers for you, and you can send that back into the insurance companies. There's people that are writing their research papers on it and all this amazing stuff. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think it's great. A lot of people, oh, it's going to take our jobs or this and that. And the way I see it, and I can be completely wrong, I'm not going to say that I'm definitely intelligent about this. I hardly even know how to make graphics on a computer. I barely know how to make these YouTube videos and upload them, but it's just like a learning process. So, but that being said, the fear is that, and we can talk strictly about academia and scholarship and articles that we make and book publishes, and people are like, this isn't genuine anymore. This isn't like true people writing. It's just grabbing data. It's grabbing information from X, Y, and Z, and that is detrimental to people learning and people understanding how to learn. And it's just an easy way out. And I like to take a pause back and let's step back from that for a second. I don't know about you guys, but when I was in high school in 2003 to 2006, we weren't allowed to use computers for our research projects. I don't know if that's true for you guys. Like, we had to go to the library, check out a stack of books, take those books home, and read. You use the computer to find the resources, but we weren't allowed to use those my freshman, sophomore year. That changed a little bit as we got older. By the time our senior year came around, or junior year came around, we were allowed to use it as like 2 or 3 resources, but that was it. So that is just kind of like the continuation, right? Like, now we started using the internet for all our cited data, or grabbing an article from halfway across the world, getting it, paying for it, downloading it. But now we're just getting all the information faster. So first off, my opinion is we're just progressing. This is just how things are going to progress. And eventually there'll be something even better, even quicker, even smarter, that will be almost lifelike, that can take control. Scary to think about for some, but I'm confident it won't get that. I have an opinion that it won't get that far. I can't say confident. So that's the first thing. And I have other friends that were like, they couldn't even use computers to write the research papers. They would have to hand write them. So just think about that. This is just how technology evolves over time. So that's one big portion that I'm like, I'm not too scared about how this is. And this brings me to a point where I had a colleague online saying, like, with all this AI that's writing scholarly papers, how do we look into that? It's like, I get the credibility portion of it, but my question is, or my point would be, is how we start quantifying great researchers and great thinkers is, what do we input? What is the question? Right. And we talked about this last week or the other week of, there are no bad questions, that, as the saying goes. But again, I think there are bad questions. There are bad questions all the time. It's just, ask a better question. That should be the goal. In the input to these AI systems, you should be asking better questions and learning how to ask better questions, so you can get the better data, so you can get better information and go out with that kind of stuff. And that's the way I see it. And that's what's going to separate people that are great thinkers, very thoughtful, very intelligent, from just some person that wants to go online and say, My doctor said this. How can I get this done for me? But, as a second, third, or fourth level thinker, you can start thinking of in advance, like, okay, this certain scenario, we want to do this. Let's think about what the side effects are, what thinks about the studies that are involved with it, and compile all this data really, really quickly to refute. And I'm just giving an example of a patient will come in. It's like, why can't you just get the MRI? Well, this is all the reasons. Oh, well, I saw my AI. They said if I just asked these certain things, you would prove it for me. It was like, well, let's talk about that. And then you can challenge those points. And I think there's almost an endless way to think about this. So I think that in the future, we're going to have a future led by people who ask the best questions. I wouldn't say out there, if you look at someone straight in the face, that you asked a stupid question. The way I like to phrase it now is like, is there a better question you could ask in this situation? And I think that's important for mentors. I think that's important for attendings. I think it's important for residents and fellows. I think we should all be doing this. Challenge yourself. What is the better question? There are hundreds of dumb questions, right? We all know that. What is the better question you can ask? There's always a why behind that. And it's not always a why. It's a function. It's a concept. It's a theory. These are the next level. And then you go study about that. And then you're more knowledgeable than the next person would be. Which brings me to my next point of, there was a medical student. There's a question. I forget exactly what it was. I was reading on Twitter, and there's a medical student saying like, yeah, I can't believe that, attendings always make them memorize all these things, because I know where to look that information up. It'll take me a quicker time to look it up than it will take me to recall it. Okay. So say you're doing an abdominal surgery and you're next to a major nerve or a portion of the abdomen that could cause life or death situation. I bet you're going to want to know that's memorized, because that answer of, oh, I'll just go look it up real fast or whatever. And maybe in the future, we will have live time screens of where the anatomy is. But are your skills going to be confident enough to do that? Are your abilities going to be confident to multitask like that? And until we're there, and I'm standing in a room and a patient asks me a question, I would feel awful if I had to go, I'll be right back. Let me go look that up. There's no shame in understanding our own deficits as humans. I say I don't know all the time in clinic. I tell them I will go look it up. I will go research it. I'm happy to do so, but I don't have a great answer for that question. Most people are really appreciative of that. There are other times I explain to them things that we do know, and how I phrase that is, in our current understanding of the X, this is why it happens. And I think that goes a long way too, because I can't be certain that everything I know now is what I will know and believe in 5 or 10 years. And again, I've made talks about this. So that is another very important way to talk to your patients with our current understanding now. Maybe in 10 years, 15 years, we're going to realize that a certain medication, why were we giving that? That was terrible. Brings up another point of, and maybe someone knows a better answer out there than I do, of, we use the same anesthetic agents over and over and over again, either to put people to sleep or semi-conscious state or conscious sedation or whatever. I was just wondering out there is, why are we not using different things, and why aren't we using more studies to utilize these other things? And maybe people are doing that in the anesthesia world. I don't read their textbooks often unless it's with pain management or their literature or anything like that. So maybe an anesthesiologist out there has some ideas and concepts. Because I think hypnosis is kind of way too far without using any chemical. But there should be things out there. And, giving a quick example, I was listening to podcasts with Tim Ferriss and Dr. Matthew Walker, who's a sleep expert, talking about like the properties of trazodone and how it can benefit different ways and not necessarily disconnect you from your body versus other sleep aids. And it's just like when you get down to the neuroscience of these things, it gets really cool. So, there's some AI stuff that I'd like to learn, and it's going to learn. Another real cool concept about AI is how a lot of companies are pushing systems of AI, and how this can auto regulate itself based off of patients' pain needs. So that'll be really cool. Some spinal cord stimulator companies are coming out with that technology. Interested to see how that works out. I don't, my biased opinion, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near what they think it is going to be. But I've been wrong before. Happy to be wrong again. I would love to be wrong about that. Here is one negative thing that I think about AI is I am working with a company that is allowing me to use their AI system as an automated virtual assistant, which I think, okay, what a great concept. Half of my phone calls don't necessarily need to talk to me. If they do need to talk to me, just leave a message. I'll get back to them when I can. A lot of them is, what are your office hours? Can we schedule a lunch? And can I set up an appointment? And all these things can be delegated to the right person in live time. So that way the phone's not ringing. It's tying up my MA. It's tying up me. It's tying up any nurses that I have here or anyone else. That virtual assistant can really delegate. And the awesome part about AI is it learns from itself over thousands and thousands and thousands of interactions. So we just continue to build interaction after interaction. So I'm going to spend some time this weekend calling my virtual assistant and just constantly trying to go through algorithms over and over and over again, just to try to get them to the right venue. And I think that's great. But, what happens if you're a 74-year-old woman from a blue-collar town? And this is my problem with all technology. These patients get frustrated. They don't understand what's going on. They give one or two short answers, thinking they're literally talking to a robot, not realizing they're talking to someone they should carry a conversation with. And this happened to me today, and the patient just gave 2-word answers. Just reschedule appointment. And the AI didn't know how to deal with the 2-word answer. They're looking for a full sentence. So it replayed it back, put the patient in a loop, and it finally said, okay, sorry, I couldn't take your information. Our whole conversation was documented. You can hang up now. And it's like, I feel bad for that patient. So I kind of reach out. It's like, listen, this isn't right. This is ageism in its finest. The population that probably needs this kind of stuff the most healthcare and most attention are our elderly people, and we're adding barriers for them to get care. And the worst part is, I don't know how to go back to that patient and be like, listen, what happened? I'm sorry, and how to fix it. I wish I did. I wish I knew how to fix it right away, but I unfortunately don't. And it just made me think. It's like, this isn't the first time. Yesterday, my whole staff took a tongue lashing from a patient because they didn't want to update their pain scores on their phone, which I asked them to do before they come into the office. So he really cusses out my staff. And, I'm like, listen, that's inappropriate. Please apologize to my staff. This is why we do it. We have reasons. I'm not trying to make extra work for you. You're fine if you didn't do it. We have alternative solutions for you. Now that you're here, we can take care of it. But, it's not fun when I get yelled at. I hate it worse when my staff gets yelled at. And I hate that the reason why they're getting yelled at is because it's so frustrating for the patients who are in chronic pain or acute pain or whatever. They're already in a vulnerable state, and they're coming to us for relief or answers or whatever. And we're ultimately not providing what they need, and we're, if anything, adding layers of stress and complexity to their lives. I'm very envious of my brother of some ways, because he is doesn't really care about technology, doesn't really care about fancy stuff, just wants to let it all go and just live out in the woods and work where he needs to work. And I'm a little bit more wired in, tuned in, up to date on things of that nature, but it's like, to these people's points, they've lived their entire lives this way. some of them utilize a flip phone, some still utilize their home phones, and they just use their cell phones when they leave the house, like we normally should. Um, they also have individuals who don't even have Wi-Fi. They have dial-up internet on a desktop computer back at their homes. And if you think I'm joking, you just need to go walk about 20 miles, 50 miles outside of any big city. And these are where these people live. They don't leave their hometowns and all this stuff. They're the patients that probably need the most access to care, but yet get the least because they're not in these big cities with these big access to cares. And it gets even worse when you're a person of color in these rural areas because you get treated even worse. And this isn't me just talking some political rant. This is backed by tons and tons of data. The social inequalities of health is one of the most fascinating topics that I've been introduced to. Thankfully, I was introduced to it very early in my career, and that's a big reason why I do what I do and how I act why I act, because I want to get the access to care to those patients that absolutely need it, and not just the people that show up to Ohio State University, Cleveland Clinic. And granted, they do take a lot of community people, but they take it for a reason that is despicable to me, which happens to be that they take these patients with the Medicaid or community plans or charity care, and what they do is they do whatever they feel is necessary and right for that patient, but their charge master is charged up 300, 400%, probably more. So at the end of the year, because most of these places are nonprofit, they run back that list and they say, we can write this off because the patient couldn't pay it. We write this off, the patient couldn't pay it. We write this off, the patient can't, et cetera, all the way down the list. So, yeah, they're doing the care, but first off, the patient has to travel there, which is not very easy. And then they take these big medical bills so they can write it off and make their people happy, their shareholders, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just a complicated system. Not trying to. That's a topic for another day, another time. Hopefully, we'll get into it soon. But getting back on track with this AI situation. Again, I think it's super exciting. I'm not ready to throw it out and just get done with it. I'm not afraid that it's going to take any jobs. I think it will take people's jobs, but we need to learn to adapt and work with it to see how we can better ourselves, better society, make one another more accountable for what we can do and how we can help each other out. I think it's just amazing. I love to learn these things and get knowledge and using the AI to make my life easier. And I think it's going to make a lot of our lives easier. But now we need to figure out what to do with that time in between. And I'm reading a book called A Man's Search for Himself. Not Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, but A Man's Search for Himself. And it's a very big concept of a valuable life is something that you take, that you can wake up to, put in the hours, feel exhausted, feel pain, feel the discomfort, and still have the enjoyment of life, whether that be kids, traveling, friends, whatever it may be. And I think that's such an important lesson that a lot of us overlook. If everything was super easy and great all the time, that Twilight Zone episode where the guy dies and all of a sudden he gets everything he wants. Every time he goes to the casino, wins, get every girl he wants, can drink as much as he wants, gets drunk, doesn't get hurt, all this stuff. But, after it keeps happening, he realized how depressed he is. It's like, this is not fun. Realizing that when he died, he had to go to heaven is actually the concept of hell in that scenario. I've never seen the episode. This is just based off whatever, but I think it's an important concept that came up this week for me quite often is do the tough things that you enjoy doing because it's going to make everything else so much more enjoyable. It's the same concept of working out or yoga or these things that make you just slightly uncomfortable, not uncomfortable enough for you to quit, but just uncomfortable enough for you, like, what am I putting myself through? Just because on the other side, other things open up and become more enjoyable. And I hope that AI will allow us more time to do those kind of things. All right. Anyways, I hope this was information was useful for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, comments, please drop them in the section below. If you have any topics you want to talk to me about, please reach out. And again, I say this every month, and it seems that a lot of people have started taking me up on this. I've given probably 5 to 7 people free advice over the past year, I'll say. And I've had a couple medical students walk through my medical practice, and I've shown them procedures, I show them how I treat patients. And I think that's really cool. I think the education starts with yourself. And if you're really passionate about that stuff, hit me up. I'm happy to have you come swing by. All right, everyone. Have a good night. We'll talk to you next time.